Welcome to Canine Code's Puppy Class number 1. I'm Kira, and without wasting any time, I am going to jump straight into showing you how to get your puppy to settle down. I also call this the latte exercise because it's exactly what you're going to need when you go to a cafe and you want your dog to settle down calmly under the table, even if there are other dogs sitting at a table right next to you. So start off with sitting on a chair, pop your puppy down on the ground. If they're playful and bitey, then put your heels together tightly underneath them, hold your legs around their waist and hold the leash right by the buckle. Not the collar and not on a longer leash, because both of those would be too exciting. Right now, you want to make his situation boring. I stem my arm against my leg so that my arm won't be moving around. I don't give commands or corrections. I don't even offer a little soothing tickle finger behind the ear. Nothing at all, because while his adrenaline is high and it's hard for him to relax, I just want him to get bored. Then the adrenaline will drop and eventually he will also just drop on the ground. Once he starts relaxing and not fighting my arm anymore, then I can let go with the legs, and if he wishes to drop down on the floor, I'm also going to allow that. I might even give a bit longer leash if he's lying down on the floor, just so I don't have to lean forward. But if he was to get up again and start playing around, then I would of course just shorten the leash again until he has settled down again. This exercise is by far easier when your puppy is very young. If your puppy is already over 4 months old, then you'll find it takes them a lot longer to settle down. It's a good example of how much easier it is to train while your puppy is still young. Their sense of expectations and their persistence is much lower while they're still under, say, 12 weeks. Just be patient. There's no need to try and rush this moment. In fact, you're better off waiting it out, because the longer time Bowie has right now to figure out the situation, the more he learns from it. So rather than trying to force anything through, I'm letting him make his own conclusion. And as you can see, here we go. He just figured out how to actually just relax. I'm sure you're keen on getting some tips on how to speed up your puppy's toilet training. If you've done any research, you've probably already discovered that there are many different strategies. If I don't mention the strategy that you've started using and it's working for you, then don't be discouraged if I don't even mention it here today. On this journey, there are many different roads to the mountain. Firstly, you won't be able to put your puppy out in the garden and just plan to bring it back in once it's toilet trained. In order to understand that your house is the den and that it's not a toileting area, it has to spend time inside. But of course, you can start off by segregating your house with pens and baby gates to make sure that the space is only small, and then as your puppy's training becomes more reliable, then you increase these segments of your house until it covers the whole area where your puppy is allowed. If you are planning to allow your dog in, say, the kids' rooms or perhaps even your own bedroom, then you can start bringing the puppy in there already now, but only just after it's been to the toilet and only under strict supervision for a maximum of, say, 15 to 20 minutes, or however often you think that your puppy might have accidents. It's a good idea to put the puppy on leash, because somehow it just keeps you more aware of what the puppy's movements are. And of course, when they're likely to go to the toilet, they will usually walk away from you, and you'll notice that if they're on leash. Toilet training is essentially creating a habit for your puppy of going to the toilet outside. The more times your puppy goes to the toilet in the right spot, the quicker the habit is formed. If your puppy has an accident somewhere else, then it's a disruption to the pattern. Obviously, the more often you take your puppy outside to the correct spot, the better chances you have of creating the habit quickly. Now, a lot of you will already have found that your puppy oddly will spend time outside and perhaps even go to the toilet outside, and yet go to the toilet straight away when they come back inside. If your puppy has this mysterious little habit, then all you can do is take note that when you bring them back inside, you've got to keep a good look at them, and as soon as there's any signs that they need to go again, then you're ready to put them out a second time. You might even decide to bring them outside for a slightly shorter period of time, bring them back inside, and then as soon as you see the signs, take them back outside. Dogs naturally don't want to go to the toilet inside their own den. Generally, once your puppy understands that your house is the den, then they will also be toilet trained. In nature, the den would be perhaps a tiny small hole under a tree stump, and the rest of the planet would be a toilet. So it's very hard for them to understand that your house, with panoramic windows, hard floors and high ceilings, are all part of the den. Therefore, your step number 1 should be to limit your puppy's space to 1 or at the most 2 rooms. Typically, if you have an open plan house, you would choose the lounge room and perhaps in conjunction with that, the kitchen and laundry. One way to dramatically speed up your puppy's toilet training is to set up a pen around your back door. Make sure that the back door is open just enough that your puppy can slip out. If it's a door like this, use a door stopper to make sure the wind won't shut the door on your puppy. Because the pen is so small and he's got his bed in there, he naturally won't want to go to the toilet in there. Instead, he'll look for other places to go, and his only option is to nip outside. So whenever you can't supervise your puppy, pop him in his pen and he'll be toilet training himself while you are not even watching. This isn't to say that your puppy has to be in the pen at all times. When you can supervise, by all means, you can shift the pen around and open it up so that he can walk straight through it in and out of the room. There's a few things you can do to help your puppy understand that your house is the den. Firstly, use this little tip. Always feed your puppy where it last had an accident. So of course, you'll clean up after the accidents, but the next time it's mealtime, that is where you're going to put its food bowl. In that way, your puppy will start seeing it as a living and eating space and not as a toilet space. You can also use the dog's water bowl and its bed. Keep moving them around to different corners, behind the dining table and behind the couch and along the windows, or in any other area where your puppy is prone to go to the toilet. You'll need to take your puppy outside many times a day, and once an hour would be perfectly reasonable. However, each puppy is different, and some of you will have to take your puppy outside every 40 minutes, 20 minutes, or even 5 minutes. Don't worry, with time, the increment will get longer and longer between your puppy's toileting. You will have to take your puppy outside every time they wake up, have had a drink, or have had a meal. It's also a good idea to realize that generally puppies don't walk away from you. So whenever your puppy is suddenly steering away in some other direction, not really following you, it's probably because they're heading out to find a toileting spot. Sometimes you'll also be able to read your puppy's body language and see things like pacing around, walking in circles, and even tugging in their tailbone a little bit. If your puppy was sleeping when you come home, don't let it back into the house or out of its gate until you've taken it outside to go to the toilet. Chances are that while you weren't at home, your puppy was sleeping, and that now that they're getting up and they're getting excited, they'll have to go to the toilet. So if I came home now, I would steer straight over here, open up this back door, walk right outside with my puppy and give it a chance to toilet, or even just leave it out there until I'm satisfied that he would have toileted by now before I actually let him in. I don't have to give him any attention before he has gotten outside and toileted. In fact, I'd rather wait so that me greeting him becomes a reward for toileting. In that way, your puppy will learn to go to the toilet straight away when he's let outside. He'll know that he will not get greeted by you until he's done his business. If you live in an apartment, or for some other reason your dog doesn't have regular access to an outdoor area, then you might want to put toileting on command. You can do this by choosing a command. It could be go toilet, or wee wee, or quick quick, whatever you want to say, but say it repetitively, calmly, while your puppy is going to the toilet. At the moment, you will be linking the word with the action. So say it at the time when he's toileting, not before. After you've done that for about a week or two, then start saying the words just a little earlier in the process, just as your puppy is starting to squat down, and keep saying it right until he's done. Then say it a little bit earlier again, and eventually you'll find that it's now become a command. You say the word and the puppy has created an association to that and will start going to the toilet. Once your puppy is done going to the toilet, of course, break out in a big cheer and fun and play to reward them for having done a good job. Do not scold your puppy if you catch it in the middle of having an accident. You'll only be teaching it to hide when it wants to toilet and typically go behind the couch or wait until you're distracted, and then you'll miss the moments. In worst case, your puppy won't even go to the toilet when you take them outside in the garden because they've learned that it upsets you. Instead, if you catch your puppy in the moment, pick them up, not with anger, but with a sense of urgency. Oh, no, oops, oh, no, and rush outside to where they should have gone and put them down with a sense of relief. To show them that now everything is good again. If you're using wee mats, then put them down wherever your puppy tends to go to the toilet by its own choice. Don't make the mistake to think that the wee mats will attract your puppy to go to the toilet on them if they're dirty. In fact, it's the opposite. Dogs like a clean space to go to the toilet, and therefore make sure that your pee mats are kept as clean as possible. Also, have more than one, if not in fact 3, because if your puppy has gone and done a number 2 on one mat, it won't want to go and do number 1 on it as well. It will want to go somewhere else, and so you need to have several wee mats laid out at the same time, all kept clean. Once your puppy uses the wee mats reliably, start inching the wee mats towards the door and eventually even out of the door. After that, you can start eliminating them altogether. I don't hesitate using wee mats because I find that once your puppy has learned that your whole house is their den and they've gained better control of their bladder, then they simply stop using the wee mats all by themselves. Once your puppy has gotten into a good routine of wanting to go outside to go to the toilet, then you can start training them to let you know when they want to be let out. It's actually quite easy. Start off by opening your door just a smidgen wider than their shoulders. Stand outside the door and lure them to come through the door with a treat. Only do this from inside to outside, because you don't want to train your dog to try and tell you when they want to be let in. I'm sure they've worked out how to communicate that already anyway. Let's not encourage it. So this is only training them to go from inside to outside. I lure my puppy through the open door several times until it's completely confident walking through the narrow gap. Once that's happened, then I will close the door a little bit more, just exactly the width of my puppy's shoulders. Now, when it goes through, it has to kind of just get through the tight space, and once they're used to that, I close it even more, just a smidgen, to where my puppy has to kind of slink through the open gap. It's all just desensitizing my puppy to go through a narrow space. I need to build up his confidence, because now that I'm going to close the door just a tiny bit more, I want him to walk up to the door and go, "Wow, that's tight. Whew, I don't know if I can get through that. But I usually do slink through, so I'm just gonna poke it a bit with my nose. I'm just gonna use my paw." And of course, the minute I see my puppy pawing or nosing at the door, I run over there and open up the door for him. This means that in the future, when I've closed the door even more, he'll walk up, he'll go, "Whoa, can't get through that." But normally, if I just paw at the door and nose a bit, someone will come running and open it up for me. And so I can close my door a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, because in the end, the dog is just going to walk up and go, "Hang on, door's shut, I need to get out. Hello? Can someone come and open?" And in that way, you've trained your dog to let you know when they want to go out. Remember, this will only work once your puppy has learnt to take itself out to the toilet. If you have a pen or a crate, you've probably already experienced your puppy crying and whimpering and carrying on because they don't want to be confined in there. No doubt, every minute counts after you've taken your puppy in through your front door. So therefore, the earlier you can start getting them used to being segregated from you in this way, the better. The more often your puppy is in the pen and carries out its little tantrum and comes to the point where they're relaxed and happy with the situation, the sooner they'll be used to it. I much prefer using pens than crates. It's just a personal choice that I've made based on the fact that pens are much more flexible, in the sense that I can set them up as a barrier or a makeshift wall, as well as an actual enclosure. It's also that little bit bigger, so I feel better about leaving my dog in there for easily up to 4 hours, if not 6. Of course, if I leave my puppy in there for that long, it will need a wee mat or, as I've done here, access to the backyard. When you want to get your puppy used to being in a pen, spend a little bit of time in the pen with your puppy first, just so that it is a familiar space that feels safe. Then, at a time when your puppy is tired, perhaps already dozing off, take them to the pen, put them in their bed with a bit of water, unless the water is outside and the door is open. And if the door is closed, put a pee mat as well. And then you simply leave, and of course, don't go back and reward your puppy for whimpering. Instead, wait until they're completely quiet, perhaps already fallen asleep. It's a good idea to go and wake them up and take them out of the pen, out for a pee first, before they wake up and have an opportunity to go into a tantrum again. Ideally, already on the very first day, when you come home with your puppy and they're tired from being in a new environment and a long car ride, of course, first enjoy a moment of your puppy in the new house, but then almost as soon as possible, pop them in the laundry or in their crate or in their pen, just to say, hey, this is how things work around here. In that way, you're setting their expectation to include time apart from you in their pen right from the start. That will help you tremendously for the future. Many of you have probably experienced that your puppy was crying and carrying on when left alone. One of the things we have to train against instinct before your puppy is 14 weeks of age is to be alone. It isn't natural for a puppy to be away from its mother and litter mates. So when they are alone, they will cry and try to change the situation. The longer you wait before you teach them how to be alone, the bigger the expectation of always having company will become, and the stronger the anxiety will be when they are alone. Therefore, start as soon as you can in getting your dog used to being all by itself, physically separated from you. You should train this kind of situation in many different types of scenario. So one where they're in a pen or a crate and you are still in the room, but also where they're perhaps downstairs and you're upstairs, or you're not home at all, or the dog are in different environments such as the laundry, the lounge room, or even outside in the garden all by itself. The only way that you can get your puppy used to being alone is by exposing it to exactly that situation over and over again. A puppy will go through a cycle of realizing they're alone, freaking out about it, throwing a tantrum, exhausting themselves, and eventually coming to acceptance. Each puppy has an unknown X amount of cycles to go through before it has become normalized to them. You'll never know that number, but of course, the more cycles you send your puppy through, and the first ones can be very, very long, the sooner your puppy will get used to it, the cycles will become shorter until they're practically non-existent. Your puppy will never love being alone, but the more they're used to it, the less anxiety they'll feel about it. Now, the common mistake would be to go back to your puppy while it's in its tantrum. And of course, scraping at the sides of the pen, barking and whimpering was a way of calling out, saying, hey, hey, come here, come back, I'm left behind. And if you then do come back, your puppy will think, so that's how to solve the problem. And you've essentially trained your puppy to do exactly that when they're left alone. You have to instead ignore and not give your puppy eye contact, not come back into the room, not talk to them, so that they learn there is nothing they can do to change the situation. Nothing at all. Even worse than going back while your puppy is starting to throw its tantrum is to wait and go back after the puppy has been in tantrum for a good 10-20 minutes, God knows how long. If you go back later in the process, but while your puppy is still in the tantrum, you've just taught them that it isn't enough to cry for just a minute. In fact, it takes at least 20 minutes and some really loud crying before you'll come back. You've trained your puppy to persevere. Don't do that. Make sure that you only create a separation when you can actually follow through and wait right until your puppy is happy and relaxed. I'm going to give you a little strategy for emergency situations where you've somehow gotten stuck in a space separate from your puppy, but you need to somehow get back into the same space. However, your puppy is still throwing a tantrum and you know you shouldn't go in there, but how can we do it when you must? Your puppy is telling you, hey, let me out. I want to come into your space. So where possible, instead, go into their space first. In that way, you didn't do exactly what they were saying they wanted. Secondly, bust in there, seeming very urgent and on a mission to do something that has nothing to do with your puppy. They'll run after you and go, hey, it's all about me, pay me attention. You're not at all going to pay any attention to that. You're going to seem very preoccupied with doing something else that gave you a reason to come into the space. You're communicating that you went into that space not because they told you to, but because you had an errand to do. Of course, don't give your puppy any attention until they are not telling you to anymore. So wait until they're completely doing their own thing, and then of course you can start interacting with them again. I highly recommend that you leave your puppy separated from you at least 3 times every 24 hours. For maintenance for the rest of their life, they should be alone at least once a day, just so they don't regress to nature. If you are having trouble with your puppy and they do seem to already have severe symptoms of separation anxiety, so crying and carrying on every time you leave them, then go ahead, make a separation 5 times every 24 hours, or even 8 or 20 for that matter. Because remember, it isn't a matter of letting them out there for a particular set of minutes or hours. It is simply until they have calmed down. And they will calm down sooner and sooner and sooner the more often you give them an opportunity to go through the experience. Before we start training your puppy, I'm going to give you a few tips on how to develop good handling skills right from the start. In that way, your training will happen much easier and faster. Firstly, when you train, have your treats ready, preferably in a pouch or on a bench top right next to you. Make sure you use treats that are solid and don't crumb on the floor, because if you continuously crumb on your floor, then it won't take long before your puppy will learn that it's easier to look for crumbs than it is to focus on you and to learn something new. It can get very frustrating when every time you put on your training mannerism, your puppy just starts looking for things on the floor instead. Personally, I use little strips of Devon. I cut them long, like a French fry, so that I've got something to hold on to, but it also is soft enough that I can just nip off, say 5 millimeters at a time when I hand the treat to my puppy. I stand up straight so that my puppy doesn't jump for my face, and I hold the treat near my sternum, because if I'm just dangling my hand with the treat around my body, then the puppy will typically jump up to try and take the treat. When I hand the treat to my puppy, I don't want them jumping up as they see the treat coming near their mouth, so I make sure that I very quickly go to their lips and very quickly stand up again. If you've got a dog that snaps for the treat and chomps half your fingers off, then almost stuff the treat into their mouth. The problem of snapping the treat often happens when you're so scared of their teeth or getting wet from their tongue that you keep pulling away the treat just as they're about to take it. And so they learn to snap faster and harder in order to get it before you pull your hand away. If instead you're almost stuffing the treat into their mouth, then they've got absolutely no reason to snap for it. So just to demonstrate, when I want to give Bowie a treat, first of all, I definitely don't give it to him when he's telling me to by barking. But second, I stand up straight, hold the treat at my sternum, and I go quickly to his lips, release the treat into his mouth, and quickly back up again. There's really no opportunity for him to start jumping up towards me or up towards my hand. Like that. And up again. If at all I accidentally crumbed on the floor or dropped the treat, then I would very quickly pick it up myself or put my foot on it so that I get to it before the puppy does. Yeah. Yes. Good boy. If you have children at home, make sure that you have a go first and master the command with your puppy before you let the children have a go. Often, if the children's handling isn't quite perfect, then it will confuse your puppy when it's still just in its learning phase, and that's not fair. If you have several children, make sure that they're not all trying to teach your puppy something at the same time and competing for its attention. That situation only creates a scenario with your puppy where instead of focusing on something, it gets really scattered, and whenever something is a little difficult and hard to understand, it will move on to a different person, offering them attention and perhaps an easier opportunity to learn, but it will never actually stay with one person for long enough to learn anything from anyone. It's a good idea to make your children sit on chairs so that they're somewhat immobilized when you're training, and then bring out one child after the other to have a turn. Learning how to settle down, but also learning how to focus on one thing, is an essential part of your puppy learning how to learn. And so I like to, at a very early stage, teach the puppies to be able to focus, meaning giving you direct and lasting eye contact. This is how to do it. And just on a little side note, that little scratching that Bowie just did, typically right back leg up behind the ear near the collar, is sometimes just getting used to the collar, but more often it's a release of tension. So it's got nothing to do with him being itchy, and no need to go to the vet and get him flea treated 3 times. Puppies very often sit down and scratch themselves behind the ear to release tension from frustration, uncertainty, or impatience. So whenever your puppy is doing exactly that, ask yourself if they've had any reason to have those 3 feelings at the time. So holding my treat at my sternum while standing up straight, I quickly bring it down to his lips, then slowly stand up with a gasp, bring the treat all the way up to your eyelashes. Yes! Mark the moment when you got direct eye contact from your puppy without any barking, and then pop the treat straight into his mouth. It doesn't matter if your puppy is standing or sitting or lying, you can still reward them, because it's not about doing anything else but giving you direct eye contact. If your puppy, by chance, jumped up like this while it was giving you eye contact, just wait until they're sitting back down. Yes! And when they're doing exactly the behavior you want, mark it with a yes and reward them. The second step to this exercise is to start training your puppy without a treat in your hand. You can use the steps of this exercise as a formula for how to convert any command from the phase of training with a treat to how to train without it. So this time, with an empty hand, I'm going to do a similar movement. So just a sweep around his nose, standing up, bringing it up all the way to my eyelashes, and then yes, yes, when he's quiet, and then I take the treat with my command hand and give it to him. The reason why I still give the treat with my command hand is because I don't want him to be staring at my treat hand while in fact I am trying to communicate with my command hand. You'll want to train up your puppy to be able to hold their concentration on you and give you direct eye contact in 2 different ways. 1, for longer and longer periods of time, and 2, in more and more distracting environments. Train up and expand on the skill in only one way at a time, and then combine them at a level where it's easy for the puppy to do both at the same time. As well as being able to hold still and give you direct eye contact, it will be great to train your puppy at this young age to turn their attention to you more often. You could also say it's name recognition, or at least we can train these 2 things together in one go. All I'm going to do is, having Bowie on a leash here, I'm going to walk around the room. Yes! And every time he turns his attention to me, yes! Having looked somewhere else, but now choosing to look at me instead, I mark it with a yes and give him a treat. Instead of just giving him treats for constantly looking at me, yes, I only offer it when he turns his attention from something else onto me. Yes. So he looked down, and when he looked back up at me, I mark it again and give him a treat. Yes. Good. It probably won't be long before many of your puppies, yes, kind of just give you attention all the time. That's good. At this point, you can start gearing it down to not giving them a treat every time. In this way, you're turning your puppy into a gambler. They'll be going, now? No? Okay. Can I get a treat now? No? Okay. Now? Yes! Okay, great, got a treat. And so they start checking in constantly to see if now is a good time to get a reward. Come. Yes! Good boy. Yes! If your puppy is not offering you any attention at all, just keep turning direction. In that way, they sort of almost have to look at you as they turn around. Yes! Very good. This is also a good opportunity to teach your puppy its name. So when walking around, when your puppy is distracted by something else, Bowie, I just say his name to get his attention. If he reacts, of course, I reward. Yes, good boy. So I'm just waiting for him to turn his attention off me. Bowie, yes. Good. And so he gets a reward for turning his attention away from something else and onto me when I call his name. Thank you for joining us this time, and well done for completing your first puppy class session. Next time, I'll be talking about play biting, and I'll teach you how to make your puppy drop and stay.